Be kind, sir. Just a penny or two, sir.
Careful, Mother.
Spare a penny, sir.
Thomas, no beggar will be ruining Wendell's day.
Right, you, out of here.
Oh, you no right to be ordering
You
me.
will get out of here, or it's a beating you will get. Come along, Mother.
Thomas, Mrs. Mary.
Reverend Franks, have you seen my brother?
Preparing himself, I believe. He has the last-minute jitters.
Just like him. Thomas, make sure that he's all right.
Yes, Mother.
Wait here, Mother.
It would be just like Wendell to foul up his own wedding.
I'll make sure that does not happen. Lawrence, shouldn't the best man be with the groom? What now?
I've pinched my cheeks till they're sore, and I'm still so pale.
Oh, please. You'll make yourself ill.
But I want to be pretty.
Wendell loves you, Eunice. He doesn't care about your looks. We should all be so lucky.
That's not what I mean.
Eunice, every bride worries about her wedding night. It will be fine.
No. I'll find out. Reverend, where is Wendell?
I was wondering the same thing. The last I saw him was in the meeting room half an hour ago.
Well, that's where I last saw him as well.
Right. Wendell, what?
The victim's name is Wendell Merrick. It was his wedding day.
Tragic. How's the family?
The bride and bridesmaid have returned to their apartment. The groom's brother has taken their mother home. I have the addresses.
And the bride's family?
She seems not to have one.
Have you secured statements from the guests?
In the process.
Very good. The body?
Right through here, sir.
Detective.
Dr. Ogden, have you a cause of death?
I can't be sure until the post-mortem, but it appears to be blunt force trauma to the head.
Pocket watch has been torn out. No wallet. Cufflinks are gone. Window is open. Killer likely gained entry through there. Murder weapon?
I can't be sure, but whatever it was, it caused very distinctive bruising. Look, it's a perfect right angle. Not so sharp as to incise the flesh, but enough to shatter the temporal bone. Perfect match.
Seems nothing is sacred these days. How long had you known Mr. Merrick?
A number of years. The Merricks are one of the more prominent families in the congregation.
And when did you last see him alive?
Scarcely half an hour before the body was discovered.
Did you notice anything out of the ordinary?
Nothing that would pertain to your...
Reverend, a man has been killed. Everything is pertinent.
I overheard Wendell and his best man arguing.
Do you recall the nature of this argument?
I couldn't hear clearly.
Why not?
They were in the meeting room while I was in my office.
And where might I find the best man?
That would be him over there. Mr. Lawrence Braxton.
Yes, we argued. Surely you don't think I would kill, but...
You must realize how this appears, Mr. Braxton.
I'm sorry. This has been a brutal shock. Wendell has been my closest friend since childhood, and... Yes,
My last words to him were angry.
What was the argument about?
I wanted him to call off the wedding.
Why?
Because he didn't love Eunice. Because this whole marriage was a contrivance. For what purpose? What else? Money.
Lawrence Braxton. Why on earth would you suspect Lawrence?
He and your brother were overheard arguing shortly before the murder, and Mr. Braxton claims that your brother was marrying not for love, but for the family business. Is this true?
It was a stipulation of my father's will that Wendell be married before he could claim his inheritance.
Why was that?
I loved my brother, Detective, but Wendell was a gadabout. There was a genuine fear, and a legitimate one, I think, that any money would be squandered if it came to him unshackled.
And being married would have kept him in check.
That's what our parents had hoped, especially Mother.
How much was he to receive?
Half the family business. I've already inherited my share.
I see. Do you know of anyone who might have reason to harm your brother?
No one.
Do you recall anything out of the ordinary?
No? Well, there was a vagrant lurking outside the church just before the wedding.
Your brother was robbed.
Bastard. One indignity wasn't enough.
I'll need a complete description of this vagrant, as well as the valuables that were on your brother's person.
Of course.
She finally fell asleep. Poor thing. Heroin. Wonder drug. Put her right out.
So you knew the deceased well?
Very well. Since childhood.
And how long have you known Miss McGinty?
A while now. I introduced them to each other, you know?
You introduced them?
Eunice had been working as a ladies' companion in Niagara Falls. She moved to Toronto and started coming to our church. I felt she and Wendell would make a good match. And I was right. I have never known a woman to love a man as she loved Wendell.
So it was a love match?
Well, of course. What are you insinuating?
He's insinuating I was after Wendell's money.
I'm sure that the detective didn't
No,
mean to
he wouldn't be
suggest
the first. Lawrence as much as accused me of being a gold digger. Why would he say such terrible things? I loved Wendell. Now, the only man who ever loved me is gone.
Wendell Merrick died of an extradural hemorrhage caused by bone fragments penetrating the temporal lobe. A lucky blow. Or unlucky, depending on your point of view.
No, wrong side. There were no defensive wounds.
Correct.
So the blow was delivered to the side of the head, but from behind.
Perhaps the killer sneaked up on his victim.
Or the victim knew his killer and was comfortable enough to turn his back on him. Anything else?
Traces of semen.
So he'd had sexual relations.
Yes, sometime earlier, before arriving at the church, I would think. With a man.
A man. You're quite sure?
Quite.
He was sodomized?
Well, there was no tearing, leading me to believe it was a consensual encounter.
He was a sodomite?
William, I believe the term now in use is homosexual.
Mandrakes, eh? Can't say I'm surprised. Does explain a few things.
Such as?
Why his parents were so anxious to marry him off. Nothing like a sanctified marriage to remove the whiff of pansy from the air.
What kind of life would that be for the prospective wife?
It's all a trade-off, Murdoch. A plain Jane like that doesn't just up and wed a Merrick. She knew what she was getting into.
Perhaps. Do you think his inclination was a factor in the murder?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was the lover who wielded the weapon.
The lover?
Well, somebody was shoving something where it didn't naturally belong. And I'm assuming that that somebody wasn't too happy about the upcoming nuptials.
But what about the robbery? Or perhaps even something to do with Mr. Merrick's inheritance?
It could be the case. Listen, I've known a few shirt-lifters over the years, and they're a dodgy bunch. They combine the vindictive cunning of a woman scorned with the male tendency to get the job done. It's the lover. I'll lay you even money.
But who's the lover?
You said yourself that the victim was arguing with his best pal. Maybe the two of them were closer than they let on. Now, Murdoch, if you'll just excuse me, pressing matters are at hand.
Constable Perkins, a word. Shut the door.
We've been to every pawn store, sir. They'll be on the lookout for the items stolen from the victim.
Any luck with the vagrant?
The Reverend Frank said...
Come in, close the door, George.
Reverend Frank says there's a fellow by the name of Old Dan who likes to beg around the church, but we don't know where he lives. That's with his door closed.
You've just given me an idea, George. According to the Reverend, he couldn't make out what Mr. Merrick and his best man were arguing about.
What do I say?
Anything, just make it loud, as though you're having an argument.
Well, an argument with who? About what?
Just imagine you're the inspector.
You bloody incompetent dog! I'm from Sheffield. I can't pronounce me L. I can't pronounce me bloody L's.
George!
Bloody L.
George, that'll do.
Thank you, sir. That takes some work.
You lied to me, Reverend.
A minister is obligated to respect the sanctity of what passes between him and his parishioners.
The words in question were not uttered between clergyman and parishioner, but between two members of his flock.
The comments were highly personal, and they had nothing to do with the murder.
I will decide that, Reverend. Now, what was said?
Lawrence was upset. He felt that by marrying, Wendell was being untrue to himself.
Because he wasn't marrying for love.
No. Because by marrying, Wendell was in denial of what he really was.
A sodomite. But you knew of this already.
Wendell wrestled with his predilection for years. I tried to counsel him as well as I could.
Who was his lover? Was it Lawrence Braxton?
I cannot, and I will not, say anything more.
Detective.
Some new information has come to light.
Won't you come in?
I think this is a matter best discussed in private. Mr. Braxton, what was the nature of your relationship with Mr. Merrick?
We were friends.
Nothing more?
What are you implying?
Were you Mr. Merrick's lover?
Good God, man. I've got a family.
You were aware he was a homosexual.
Of course I knew. I've known since we were children that there was something different about Wendell.
And how did you feel about this?
Oh, very notion is difficult to contemplate. But Wendell was a good man. You're not suggesting that his persuasion had something to do with his murder?
Do you know who his lover was?
No. Wendell kept that part of his life separate from me.
And was this the real reason you were against the marriage?
It had all been so whirlwind. I didn't feel that either one of them really knew what they were getting into.
Of course, I suspected. There were times when things didn't feel right. The way they should between a man and a woman.
This is terribly awkward, Miss McGinty, so I'll simply say it. We believe that Wendell had a lover. We also believe that this individual may be involved in his death. Have you any idea who this might be?
Perhaps.
I know this is terribly difficult, but please, if you have any idea who he is.
I know the groom isn't supposed to see the bride before the wedding, but I needed to know everything was all right. So when Daisy was powdering herself, I went to find Wendell. That's when I saw them.
Saw who, Miss McGinty?
Wendell and Reverend Franks. They were kissing.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 6 days since my last confession.
Most unlike you, William.
I've been somewhat distracted.
You must always make time for the Lord.
Father, I must question a man of the cloth on matters of a criminal nature.
No man is above the law.
His crimes may not only be against the laws of man.
What has he done?
He may be a sodomite.
That is a very grave sin.
Should he prove not guilty of the earthly crimes, must his congregation be made aware.
If a man also lie with mankind, as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. William, the Bible is clear on this matter. Let the word of the Lord guide you. Say 2 rosaries and reflect on this matter. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Poor Eunice was overwrought. She misinterpreted what she saw.
And what was that?
A clergyman offering solace to a member of his flock.
Solace for what?
Wendell had decided that he could not go through with the wedding, that it was unfair to both Eunice and himself.
So he came to you for counsel?
He knew that it would utterly destroy both his fiancée and his mother. Yet he felt it was something he had to do.
And this solace, as you call it, did it take a physical form?
He was shaking. I embraced him to calm him. I dare say you'd have done the same.
Well, an embrace is one thing, but kissing's an entirely different matter.
If I kissed him, it was a brotherly kiss on the cheek.
Is that what passes for brotherly comfort in your church, Reverend? Or is it something worse? Are you a sodomite? Were you Wendell Merrick's lover?
How dare you accuse me of such things? In the eyes of the Lord, that act is an abomination. I would never betray my God.
So now the minister could be a handbag as well, eh? You'll soon be seeing mandrakes in your sleep, Murdoch.
They were seen kissing just shortly before the murder.
But is he the lover?
I don't know.
Well, then find out.
But how, sir? If they were involved, their relationship would have been a closely guarded secret.
To the public, yes, but these people have their own societies. I think the thing for you to do is to sidle up to a few Marys.
How? Beat the bushes down at Cherry Beach?
No. If you want to catch a bender with class, upper-crust mandrakes like Wendell Merrick have their own clubs.
What clubs?
Well, it varies. What day is it?
Monday.
Monday. They used to meet on Mondays in the guise of literary appreciation. Oi, Higgins! Whatever happened to that Monday afternoon pansy club? Do they still meet in the back room at the Dominion?
Not after that last raid, sir. Believe they're at the Taylor Creek Tennis Club now.
Ah, you see, that's the problem with catching these mollies. You swat them here and they pop up there.
How does Higgins know this?
Well, between you and me, he has a cousin who's a bit of a left-footer. But you won't pass for one looking like that, though.
Pass for one?
Yes, not bad, not bad. We may have gone a touch overboard with the feathers. There you go. Right then, the pansy. Who's got the pansy? Of course, Higgins. Did you get that off your cousin? Pansies, symbol of fairies the world over. Now remember, don't overplay your hand. Be subtle.
let your quarry make the first move.
A racket, sir?
Show us your swing.
I beg your pardon?
Your tennis swing. Let's see it. You'll be fine.
It's a sad time. I choose to remember him for who he was. He was warm, gentle, and generous in every way, and not afraid, even in the face of the most withering scorn, of expressing his sincere appreciation of Spanish wine. So, gentlemen, I'd like you to join me in tossing a little Rioja past the gums. To Wendell Merrick.
To Wendell.
To Wendell.
To Wendell.
Ah, thank you for coming. Here, let's talk.
Well put.
Thank you. Did you know Wendell?
A bit. Obviously not as well as you did.
Yes. He was a good friend. I was devastated to learn what happened. Jeffrey.
George. George Crabtree.
You knew?
Yes.
How did you hear about us? We try to keep a low profile.
Through a friend in Montreal.
I see. Just who is this friend?
We in Montreal also like to keep a low profile.
Understood. But I must say, the outfit is hardly low profile. You look like Oscar Wilde. If Oscar Wilde were good looking.
So you know this crowd well?
Yes. We're all regulars. So there's no need to be concerned. What happens inside stays inside. You've never done this before.
No.
Then welcome. Truly. It takes a lot of courage to come here like this. You tremble?
Yes, well, perhaps I am a bit nervous.
It happens to us all.
Would you like to go someplace private?
I have this cozy little place in Corktown. I don't play doubles. Bastard.
You recognize this man? Have you ever seen him at the club with Mr. Merrick? I could have you charged with indecency, sir.
I don't know what you're talking about, Detective.
You propositioned me.
No, you propositioned me. In fact, you came off remarkably believable.
Just tell me if you've ever seen this man at any of your events.
Why? So you can conduct a witch hunt? I think not.
So that's the bender.
He's somewhat reticent.
Oh, really?
I can handle this, Inspector.
Don't tell me you're going soft on this, Murdoch.
I just think that if I talk to him, that I'll...
Talk. So, Jeffrey, take a very good look at this photograph. Now tell me, do you recognize this man? So, Jeffrey, it's just you. The good Reverend pansy.
I see.
But he's definitely not Wendell Merrick's lover. Would you like to know who is? Our friend and family man, Lawrence Braxton.
Come in, Detective.
Mrs. Braxton, I'd like to speak with your husband, please.
Is everything all right?
I just need to speak with him, thank you.
He's upstairs.
Lawrence? Detective Murdoch is here to see you. Lawrence? That's strange. I know he's up there.
May I?
Of course.
Lawrence?
Oh my God!
Our marriage wasn't perfect, but Lawrence loved his child. And me. In his own way.
So your marriage was an arrangement?
An understanding. Lawrence had safety. And in turn, I had a child and a home. He kept his affairs discreet. I chose not to press.
Did you know of Lawrence's involvement with Wendell?
I suspected.
Is it possible your husband killed Wendell Merrick?
No, he loved Wendell. I'm sure of that. He would never harm him.
Preliminary findings, Doctor?
Petechial hemorrhaging. It's one set of ligature marks. It seemed to be self-inflicted death by hanging.
A beautiful home, wife, child. Not only does he throw all of that away, but condemns himself to eternal damnation by committing suicide.
Perhaps he felt that hell was no worse than the torment he was living in.
There's always hope.
He was living a sham. Everything was a lie. Secretly, he was in love with someone he could never be with, and furthermore, that person was about to marry someone else.
Yes, but to kill himself?
Really, William, I'm surprised at your close-mindedness.
Even leaving the Bible aside.
Yes, could we?
It goes against nature.
Oh, rubbish! Nature is full of omnisexual behavior. Have you never seen male dogs at play?
But those are dogs.
We are all animals, William. Behaving as nature intended. If God didn't want us to express our desires, then why would he give us desires in the first place?
To test our resolve.
At whose expense? Surely this is not God's plan.
Of course the wife will say that. No woman wants to believe her husband's capable of murder. But his swinging body's almost a signed confession.
I hardly think that's true.
He knew we were closing in, so he took the easy way out.
Lawrence Braxton loved Wendell Merrick.
You can never do it the easy way, can you, Murdoch?
Sir, I believe this investigation has been sidetracked.
Sidetracked? How?
I think the victim's homosexuality has caused us not to pursue other viable theories.
I see. And these other theories?
Like I said before, robbery gone wrong or something to do with the victim's inheritance.
Listen to me. Braxton's our boy. End of.
Sir, we have found the vagrant. Oh, and Thomas Merrick is on his way to identify him.
They're mine. This belonged to my dear dead father. This was given to me upon my retirement from the Navy. Now these are a story to themselves. They were given to me by the Duke of Cornwall as a reward for saving the virtue of his daughter.
And after all these years of carrying these valuable items around with you, you suddenly decide to pawn them all.
I've fallen on hard times.
Do you know why you're here?
Ah, you think I nicked these things, but I swear.
You're not here for theft. You're here for murder.
I mean, murder? I mean, I may be a lot of things, but I'm no murderer.
These items were taken from a man who was found murdered yesterday morning in Shooter Street Church.
No, it wasn't me.
You were spotted at the scene.
No, I mean, it wasn't me. It couldn't be me.
Then tell me truthfully, what happened?
I found him
Where?
outside the church. I mean, some bloke. He chucked him outside the window, I swear.
Ah, Mr. Merrick. Thank you for coming down. You recognize this man?
I know you.
This is the vagrant I saw outside of the church.
No, you're the fella who chucked these things outside the window.
You would take the word of a derelict boozer over mine.
Why would he identify you?
He just wants to point the finger at somebody. Anybody.
Mr. Merrick, were you jealous of your brother?
What?
Hardly seems fair. A gadabout like your brother inheriting half the family business just for marrying a girl.
Are you implying that I killed my brother?
Then you took his valuables to make it look like a robbery.
I was nowhere near that room.
Odd. You claim to have been searching for your brother shortly before the ceremony, Mr. Merrick. Are you familiar with finger marks?
Excuse me?
They're the prints that your oily fingers leave behind when you touch something. Quite handy for investigations. You see, no two are alike. Do you think if I check this watch and cufflinks, I might find your finger marks?
All right. I was in the room.
What happened?
I wanted to make sure that Wendell was all right. But I swear to God, I did not kill him. He was lying there, and I just knew it had something to do with his deviance.
So you knew?
Of course I knew. The whole family knew.
Is that why your mother bribed him to get married, then?
That's a crude way of putting it, but yes.
Continue.
It was clear that he'd been murdered. I knew if the police investigated, the truth would come out.
So you took his valuables, threw them out the window so that it would look like robbery.
I'd seen the beggar earlier. I thought...
What? We would just assume it was him. So you re-entered the room and pretended to discover your brother's body.
I had to do it. Could have ruined our family.
That would have been a tragedy.
Yes, Detective. It would have.
So you're still here?
Yes, but I'm not having any success.
According to the papers, the case is closed. Lover murders groom on wedding day.
That's the inspector's opinion.
Not yours, I take it?
I keep wondering why Lawrence Braxton would kill the man he loves.
It's a very good question.
Doctor, I must tell you, the circumstances around this case have been very difficult for me. They go against my upbringing, my education, my beliefs.
Really? I brought you the final results of Lawrence Braxton's post-mortem.
Anything out of the ordinary?
Nothing you're not aware of.
Doctor, if he were the killer, why would Lawrence Braxton wait until the day of the wedding to kill Mr. Merrick?
Perhaps it was a true crime of passion. He didn't plan to kill Wendell. He was upset.
But that is where I have the problem. They would have both been in marriages of convenience. Nothing in their relationship would have changed.
Then why was he killed? It's usually always about love or money. And you seem to be eliminating love.
And it wasn't robbery. I've also eliminated that. It only leaves inheritance.
Who would have stood to gain? His brother?
Eventually, but only after the mother died.
The bride was only have received her share if the marriage had been completed.
Yes. If the marriage had been completed.
You're welcome.
Have you come to make it a matching set?
I'm sorry? come to ask for your help.
My help? The last time I told you anything, Lawrence ended up dead.
Neither of us can undo what's happened. But we still have a chance to at least make it right.
I've already told you everything I know about Wendell.
It's Lawrence that I want to know about.
What about him?
Did he ever discuss Wendell's wedding with you?
Lawrence once told me he was worried.
What about?
Well, he felt that Wendell was getting into the marriage too quickly.
Why? What was bothering him?
Well, he felt that Wendell didn't know enough about his bride.
Miss McGinty?
Yes. Lawrence felt that she was a cipher.
Did you ever meet her?
Once. She seemed like a dowdy little thing.
Then how did Wendell feel about her?
Oh, he just wanted to get the whole ordeal over and done with.
So he was predisposed to marrying her?
Not her specifically. The truth is, he would have married virtually anyone to get that hideous mother off his back.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. You've been most helpful. Driver, pull over.
Sir?
Hey, Jeffrey. If I were you, I wouldn't play any more tennis on Monday evenings. In fact, I think your entire group should take up another sport.
I don't know what more I can add, Detective. Eunice and I met at the church. There was nothing odd about it.
Would you mind telling me exactly how you two met?
It was a strawberry social. Thomas introduced us.
Thomas, I see. And how had he met Miss McGinty?
I don't know.
And did you know at this point that Wendell was looking for a bride?
Yes, Wendell told me very early on. Then Thomas came to me to ask for help as well.
Had he?
Yes. As I got to know her, I realized that Eunice was perfect for Wendell. A godsend.
Yes, clearly. You told me earlier that she was from Niagara Falls. Do you recall the name of her employer?
A Mrs. Schreier.
Mrs. Schreier.
Schreier.
What do you mean we've been looking at this case all wrong?
We've been working under the assumption that whoever killed Wendell Merrick stood to profit from his death.
But just how else is there to look at it?
Well, sir, consider this. What if it's the timing of the murder that's off?
Off? You mean he was to be killed after the wedding?
Yes. Who would have stood to gain then?
I suppose we'd be taking a very close look at his new bride.
Precisely. Now, no one seems to know anything about her past to speak of. As well, sir, there's the timing. She enters the victim's life at virtually the perfect moment.
All right, I'll grant you that could all be construed as a bit dodgy, but the facts remain that Merrick's dead and his bride didn't get the inheritance.
What if something went wrong with the plan?
Such as?
Wendell Merrick caught wind of it?
Forcing the killer's hand. That's a lot of ifs, Murdoch.
Yes, well, what if I find out more about this Eunice McGinty? Perhaps that will lead us to the truth.
Get yourself a train ticket to Niagara Falls and see what her former employer has to say.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and Murdoch, make that coach class.
Oh, my. Eunice was such a dear girl, Detective.
And how long did she work for you, Mrs. Schreier?
Almost 3 years.
What was she like?
She's quiet, unassuming. You know, I don't think she ever got over the fact that her parents died.
She was an only child?
Yes, so incredibly lonely. I always think that's why she did it.
Did what?
Why she jumped into the gorge just below the falls.
She's dead?
Yes, 6 months, didn't you know?
Mrs. Schreier, do you recognize this woman?
Oh, my, yes.
Eunice McGinty.
Heavens, no. That is Bridget Klein.
Bridget Klein?
Bridget and Eunice worked together at the house. In fact, Bridget was with Eunice when she jumped.
Was she? Do you know where Bridget is now?
She moved away to Toronto after the whole terrible affair.
Do you know why?
Bad memories? I suppose she wanted to be closer to her fellow.
And who was that?
Oh, I can't remember his name. I can't be sure, but I think he owned some kind of company.
His name didn't happen to be Thomas Merrick, did it?
Yes, that's it.
It's quite lovely.
Thank you.
Miss McGinty. My, you've undergone quite a transformation.
Can't a girl fix herself up?
You're planning a trip.
Yes, I needed to get away from this horrible situation. I'm sure you understand.
Yes, yes, of course. I've just returned from Niagara Falls myself.
Oh?
Yes, it seems the police there are opening an investigation into a suicide.
Whatever are you talking about, Detective?
Yours, Miss McGinty. Or should I say, Miss Klein.
Well, this is somewhat awkward.
You're a con artist, aren't you, Miss Klein? There are warrants for your arrest in Windsor, London, and Cambridge.
I never knew I was so famous.
Please stop joking. This is hardly a trivial matter.
No, I suppose it isn't.
This was all an elaborate plan to steal Wendell Merrick's shares of the company, wasn't it? Thomas resented that Wendell was about to receive half of the family business simply for marrying a girl, didn't he?
The company was a mess when Tom took it over from his father. He built it up single-handedly.
I'm curious. Then how did you two meet?
At the falls. Thomas had an eye for the ladies.
Ah, a rich gentleman for an ambitious lady.
We both had healthy appetites.
But Thomas only had half of a company. Why not the whole thing? Did he think of that? Or did you put the idea in his head?
Tom was more the doer than the thinker.
So when poor old Eunice fell, if she fell...
That's conjecture.
You decided to take her place. It was perfect. A new identity for the wanted Bridget Klein.
If you say so.
Even better, you were impersonating a lonely woman desperate to marry, who was about to meet an equally desperate man, a man who was about to become very rich.
A match made in heaven.
And that's why you befriended Daisy, because you knew she would introduce you to Wendell. Then the plan was to marry, and after a few months, what? Maybe poor Wendell would suffer a terrible fall and die, just like Eunice had.
That would be highly ironic.
And then the grieving widow and her inheritance would find comfort in the arms of her brother-in-law.
You should write books, Detective.
What went wrong? I will piece this together. Count on it.
Tom went to check on Wendell. He found him crying. Wendell had decided not to go through with the wedding. It just wasn't fair to him. It wasn't fair to him. Tom was such a hothead.
I can't go through this. Wendell, I can't do this. Wendell, it's not fair. This is not...
He could have walked away right then.
Any idea what I've been through? You tell him or I will.
But no. Tom couldn't even get that right.
Selfish!
He didn't even remember hitting Wendell.
And where's Thomas now?
In the other room.
What have you done to him?
Heroin. Really is a wonder drug.
I've just returned from the hospital.
And?
Thomas Merrick will live.
And this Eunice?
Bridget.
Whatever her name is. She poisoned Merrick and then decided to bugger off. What is it?
Thomas Merrick didn't care that his brother was a homosexual. And Wendell Merrick wanted nothing to do with the family business.
And your point is?
That this whole affair was tragically avoidable. If Mrs. Merrick had simply let her sons be, none of this would have happened.
Look, the old dear was just doing what she thought was right. Would you care for... Oh, never mind.
And furthermore, I believe that the pressures of our investigation
Look,
ultimately...
just hold it right there. I know what you're going to say, and it's complete rubbish. We were just doing our job. If Lawrence Braxton was too delicate for this world, that's not our problem.
I'm not saying we were entirely responsible, just that it was the culmination of these events.
Listen, Murdoch, you may be right. Maybe someday things will change, but until then, we just carry on as best we can.
Sir, regardless of how we rationalize these events, Lawrence Braxton did leave behind a wife and child.
Good night, Murdoch.
Good night, Inspector.
there something you'd like to tell me, William?
Father, I find myself questioning the basic tenets of my faith.
We all face challenges. Even Jesus did.
2 men are dead. By all standards, good men. Yet they're condemned to eternal damnation. How can this be God's will?
It is not for us to question the will of the Lord.
But that's just it, Father. I don't think I can follow blindly anymore.
Your faith must not waver.
I imagine a world that is more compassionate and enlightened and...
Someday it may be. Perhaps not in our lifetimes. In the meanwhile, trust in the guidance of the Lord. Say 2 rosaries and reflect on these matters.
Thank you. I will.
William, the man of the cloth you came to me about, what did you decide to do?
I said nothing.